You're listening to the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. Now here's your hosts, Kevin, Derek, and Alex.
All righty, welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. I am Derek and joined, as always, by your co-hosts, Kevin and Alex. Gentlemen, how we doing?
What is going on?
All right. I thought you had more than that. Hey,
No, normally I'm a little bit more long-winded. Not tonight. I'm happy. I'm happy. I'm here with you guys. What do you want me to say?
You're happy. Did you watch any XFL this past weekend?
Yes, I did. I watched
the
Dallas. What is it? The Dallas Renegades and the Las Vegas Vipers. Is that what it is?
Sure. Yeah. I don't know.
I watched that game on Saturday, and then I watched a portion of the Orlando Guardians and whoever they were playing on Sunday.
Cool. What'd you think of the gameplay? I only caught portions. I didn't watch an entire game. I don't think I even watched an entire quarter. But some of the rule changes, right? These are some of the things that, the partnership that they have with the NFL to kind of experiment and see, do these rule changes work? Was there anything that caught your attention on it? Because there were a few that I saw that really stuck with me. I really like the kickoff.
I kind of like the kickoff, so that's good. The product itself was rusty. You can tell they haven't had a whole lot of time together. So I'm hoping that does improve as they get some more practice time and real reps together, because it was a little clunky, but there were moments of, hey, that was pretty damn good. So I like the I like the catch rule. I like the 1 foot thing. Dude, let him play. Let him catch the damn ball. The 2 feet are great. Yes, you're professional. You should be able to get 2 feet down, but people want to see points. People don't want to see 9-6 football games anymore. So if you can get 1 foot down and you maintain possession of the ball through the ground or falling to the ground, guess what? You caught the damn ball. Let's move on and let's go.
I agree. Kickoffs, I was a big fan of that. I was a big fan of the kickoff rule because it encouraged returns, right? It encouraged returns in a safer environment, right? For those that don't know, and Kevin, you'll have to correct me, but I think what the object of it was, the kicker still kicked the ball off from the 25 or the 30, whatever it was. But the players lined up 5 yards apart from each other at the opposite 30, right? Or 25.
30, 35, whatever it was.
Yeah. And it still encouraged a return. You don't have guys gaining 50 yards of speed, because realistically in today's NFL, it takes a guy, 15 yards to be at top speed, and top speed for anybody in the NFL these days is really flipping fast. So it doesn't take long for those guys to get to top speed. So you don't have those high speed collisions, which is what they're trying to remove from the game. Hi, myself. And they are encouraging returns still, because the kickoff return, I still think, is an important part of the game. It's kind of boring to just start every drive 25. Here we go. There's still some strategy and some tactics, and it does encourage all 3 phases of the game, which, as we saw in the Super Bowl, are important. All 3 phases are very important in the game.
Yeah.
The other thing,
because they can't move, right? The kicking team,
they can't move until it's caught.
Move until the ball is touched.
Right.
Caught, muffed,
whatever, but it's got to be touched.
And so it was really interesting to see some of those strategies with those short kicks, and they kind of hop up, and you're trying to short hop essentially, right? So that way he grazes it and the teams can pin him back. But what I didn't understand, and maybe you caught this and I didn't, is if you kick it into the end zone, it is the returning team gets it in better field positioning than just the 25. They discourage
the touchback. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't see any of that, so I don't know. But I would assume that is the case, because they wanted to bring the return back into the game. So I didn't see any touchbacks of where they would place that ball. The other thing that I really liked, which will never, ever, ever come to the NFL, was the access to the replay booth. And I thought that was fantastic to just hear them work through. I know Dean Blandino isn't for everybody, but his ability to, for them to talk to him and have, it's not just this fictitious character in a booth like the Wizard of Oz, right?
Mhm.
Like deciding very important things under cover of darkness that we don't get to see or interact with. Instead, there's some accountability and some thought process, and you understand, right? And sometimes all you need is just a simple explanation from what the guy saw. Look, here's what I saw. This is it. We move on.
So,
And not like it, but that's what he saw, and you can't fight with what they saw, right?
what did you think about I guess it's still a PAT. It's the play after touchdown, though, not the point after touchdown necessarily.
And the multitudes that you could choose.
Yeah. Did you like that? The 1, 2, or 3 points from X amount of depth away from the end zone?
I do
Reminds
like
me of
that.
flag football, absolutely.
Yeah, I do like that. And again, I think, I don't like that they take the kickers out of it, but that was kind of the kicker's own doing, right? Like kickers got too good in the NFL that it was just too automatic to be from the 2. I do like the idea of scoring points, right? That's all we want. We just want to see some points scored. So I like that. I did find it funny. One of the plays I did see was a false start on the play after touchdown. And so they were still going for 2, but they were from the 10. And I was like, ooh, that really stings. You almost wish that you could just be like, hey, we'd go for 3 anyways.
Right. So I liked the play after, right? And I think the NFL would have a hard time with that, right? As they try and take collisions out of it. But from a point total thing, it really makes you process and think about what you're doing, right? Not only with trying to acquire a lead in a football game, but also the ability to kind of get some chunk plays back or chunk points back.
Yeah.
If you're chasing points in the fourth quarter, and it allows for the team trailing seemingly to never truly feel out of it, right? Like, you get a touchdown and 3 points, like, hey, you just that 10
it changes what a 2-possession game is, right?
Yeah,
like,
absolutely. So
and it really increases the strategy. Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed that. I'm gonna make an effort as I can to try and watch some more of the XFL to pick up on some more little nuances. And I hope, and I think they are, but I hope the NFL is watching to see what works, what doesn't, something that you can apply. Because realistically, right, like we've just seen it with Major League Baseball, where they instituted all these rules, but they were able to try them out in a comparable situation over the course of a season, right, with AAA. And there is no AAA when it comes to the NFL. So to have these leagues really helps kind of give you an idea of what it looks like in practice, because in theory, a lot of this stuff is, okay on paper, but what does it look like in practice? What are the unintended consequences of rule changes that you didn't think of because you didn't see it actually play out? So those are things that I'm really hopeful that the NFL can take away from the XFL. And speaking of, other alternative football leagues, the USFL had their draft today. And I still haven't figured out how that works, because they drafted a lot of dudes that are still hoping to hear their name in April or try to latch on with a team in April.
I think it goes back to the AFL, NFL days where the player has a choice, right? Like you now have a fallback, and I would assume that the USFL understands that you're playing second fiddle, right? So if you're a 7th round pick, do you go and fight for a chance to make a roster squad or a practice squad in the NFL, or do you decline the NFL draft? And I think this is what it is. If you decline the NFL draft, do you then get
yeah, do you, like,
redrafted?
Because the USFL, well, I think it kind of works like hockey, right? Where like a team has your rights, and if you want to go play in another league, which happens all the time in the NHL, that players will go play over in Russia or over in Europe.
But the
USFL owns your
rights for that season,
right?
because no contract was signed. So you
Correct.
just can't go anywhere else that year. But if you wanted that developmental year
within the league,
not go in the 6th round, say you think you
Yeah.
can jump to the 4th, right? And
or like baseball, yeah.
And you kind of bet on yourself to play in the USFL and actually get the playing time for that 1 year because you didn't sign an NFL contract. I believe you're redraft eligible.
I don't know. It's gonna be kind of weird. We'll see how that all plays out. But USFL, they have their week 1 as I'm looking at it here. Not that I'm a USFL expert by any means. I looked this up. Week 1 is April 15th and 16th. So we'll see.
You know, it's going to be weird having both these leagues run at the same time, though.
I know, but it'll be fun, right?
It'll be something. I didn't realize how much I wanted to watch football until I saw the XFL games. I was like, huh.
I guess I'll watch some spring football.
I don't really feel like watching college basketball yet. Like, okay, I'll watch this. So
it's good. It's fun. I hope they pan out, and I hope that there are lessons that can be taken. I hope the NFL isn't too big for its own britches there to not learn from these other leagues, because realistically you can't adapt anything from college because it's such a different game. Like, it is, in my opinion, it's a completely different game.
You should adapt the overtime rule from college.
Well, that's a hot take. That's a spicy take, because I know there's a lot of people who don't like the college overtime rule because it is not gameplay anymore. We should save that.
In hockey, and people love that.
Yeah, but you still get
inside the World Cup.
But you still get a point. Oh, I know. There's plenty of people that don't like the World Cup either. They go into penalties. In hockey, at least during the regular season, you still get a point. In overtime, it's the exact same. In the playoffs, it's the exact same as the first 3 periods.
Yeah, and I guess.
And maybe that's what they should do. Maybe they should make NFL overtime. Hey, look, it's another 15-minute period. We play until there's a winner at the end of it. Like,
no, I mean, I don't know. It's hard, and I get the player safety thing and everything else, but hell, trade 2-point conversions in overtime if that's what you're gonna do. Like,
yeah,
what we have currently is better than what we had 5 years ago with sudden death. Okay,
agreed.
So we made that stride, but ultimately, who gives a rip? Like, the team who still gets the kickoff first inherently has an advantage based off of a probability of a coin flip. That's not the way to decide a game still.
I agree.
It doesn't matter that each team gets a possession. Like, you're still basing your average of winning on the laws of probability. Like, line them up at the 2-yard line and trade 2-point conversions. And just go for it. Like, it's just best on best. Like, here it is. So there you go. That's my take for this evening. Or one of my takes. I guess I'm not done yet.
Very true. All right, well, guys, we've got a great show coming your way. We're going to hit up a lot of the free agency, NFL free agency, right around the corner here. A lot of coaching changes. A lot of the coaching staffs are starting to settle in here. Broncos can't seem to figure out a defensive coordinator, but that's okay.
We don't need one.
We'll talk about all of those things. You can follow along with the show on all the socials.
We cut him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Anyway, you can hit us up on all the socials: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok at Good Old Boys FF. Best way to support this independent podcast: head over to the YouTube channel, click the subscribe button over there, and all of those good things there. So. That was some very good, interesting, spicy takes to get things starting off and get things cooking there. I'm very interested to see some of these spicy takes as we get going into some free agency type of news. And with that, we'll be looking at potentially some big names out there that are hitting the free agency deal, the potential landing spots out there. And this is always the fun one, the cap casualty speculations on that one. There's some big names out there this year that also have some fantasy relevance to it as well that could be on the cap casualty side of things there. So, guys, where do we want to start tonight?
I'll start. I think we need to start with the important and the one that, at least in our league, right, in the home league, It is the most important position. It's the most important position on a football field, realistically. That is at quarterback, right? And there's a few big names that are out there, right? That are slated to become free agents as we speak here. And so, I don't want to go and rehash an old topic, but Lamar Jackson is out there, and I think we've seen on at least here on our show, we have said that the Ravens would be silly to not sign him, but the market for a Lamar Jackson may not be what it is outside of Baltimore. Is that a fair characterization?
Yeah, I mean, if you're an NFL GM, right? Like, here's the way to think about it. Derek Carr just got released, getting, you're slated to make $40 million a year. Are you signing Lamar Jackson for that kind of money? And moreover, when you look at his camp, he's wanting guaranteed money on top of it. The Deshaun Watson-esque type of deal where all of the money or the vast majority of the money is guaranteed. And we're talking about a guy that hasn't been able to finish a season the last 2 seasons. Team missed the playoffs on one of them. The next one, they make the playoffs, but he's still unable to go. So you look at that, right? Like, which one gets you closer to your end goal there? Is it Derek Carr? Is it Lamar Jackson? I don't know.
I think Lamar Jackson needs a special OC and a guy who is willing to completely redo the offense, just as Baltimore was, to develop him. Because here's the deal with Lamar Jackson. He can't throw outside. He doesn't throw well deep.
Nope.
So you need a really strong slot receiver and a really strong tight end to help Lamar Jackson's passing game.
He will let a really strong slot and a really strong tight end thrive. Like, he can do that.
Yeah, but you had a really strong slot receiver, and he said, "I want out."
It's fair.
I want out. I don't want to be part of this thing. I want to go to an offense that they actually throw the ball, and passing is a part of the game plan, not a we're going to dance around and throw the ball when it suits us.
Yeah. So I would not sign Lamar Jackson if I'm an NFL GM. I'm not dealing with it. I'm not dealing with the fact that you seemingly sandbagged the end of this season. I'm not dealing with the fact that you haven't finished the last 2 seasons. I'm not dealing with the fact that your rushing numbers have gone down every year since your MVP season. I'm not dealing with the fact that your completion percentage is like 63.4. Like, I'm not dealing with the fact that, outside of your MVP season, you're not throwing for more than 20 touchdowns a year, right? And the threat of running, yes, is there. That's great. But teams have caught on. Teams know that Lamar Jackson can't throw outside. So you run press coverage on the outside. You have to worry about Mark Andrews. You keep one safety over the top. That's it, just for that same route coming from the slot or the tight end. And then you bring the other safety down into the box, and his responsibility is either to spy Lamar Jackson and or just stuff the run. Like, there you go. I mean, and it's not
You'd like to play defensive coordinator against the Ravens.
Well, yeah,
We've given you the blueprint.
And there's a little bit more in depth to it than that, but that's generally what it is. Like, I'm not blown away by this, and the fact that he wants, $250 million and wants 235 of it guaranteed, and Deshaun Watson type money. Guess what? Deshaun Watson did not look great the first couple of games coming back, but he showed improvement over the last 8 games of the regular season, and he can throw the ball.
Yeah.
Like, Lamar Jackson can throw the ball. I mean, but he is not an elite arm in the NFL. He is a okay arm at best. And realistically, if you just closed your eyes and you started talking about throwing outside the numbers and you just started putting statistics up, Taylor Heineke's better.
Daniel Jones is better.
Daniel Jones is better. Cooper Rush had better numbers throwing outside the numbers for the Cowboys than what Lamar Jackson has. Brock Purdy was better. Geno Smith was much better. And you can kind of just go down that list. So why are you wanting to invest that type of money in Jackson? Like, he's going to end up getting tagged. And I think that's just kind of it, because the Ravens don't have a plan B. Like, it's not Tyler Huntley. We saw that.
Right.
So Lamar's going to end up getting tagged, which is still a very sizable salary for a season. But with him getting tagged, I fully expect the Ravens to draft a potential quarterback for the future. There's been some rumblings that he might be traded to Atlanta, which I found interesting. I don't know that I love that, but it's at least it's newsworthy that that's a potential trade, kind of a sign and trade deal. So all that to be said, I'd rather take Derek Carr than Jimmy
Lamar.
Jimmy Garoppolo both over Lamar, just because Jimmy G you can get for a song comparatively and at least understand what your baseline is. Same thing with Derek Carr. You understand what his baseline is, and he can throw the ball to, the spots on the field that Lamar Jackson is kind of scared to, realistically. Like, and I don't think you're paying either one of those guys as much as what Lamar Jackson is demanding. That's why everything you hear is about Derek Carr at the moment. But part of that's because the tampering period hasn't started yet, and I understand that as well.
Right. And you're probably going to be able to get Derek Carr, Jimmy G, both of those guys are probably going to sign somewhere around $35 million a year. It would be my guess as far as what they'll probably end up signing for. You'll probably see Daniel Jones somewhere in my guess would be 26, 27 million a year kind of range if he's not tagged as well. But yeah, there's a lot of quarterbacks out there that would make more sense there. If you got to pick a landing spot for Derek Carr, where are you calling?
I'll go with the easy one just because I can. I'll take the Jets.
I don't mind the Jets. I really think Tampa Bay's in salary cap hell. But if Tampa Bay is serious about retooling or reloading, not necessarily rebuilding, Derek Carr makes the most sense out of the quarterbacks that are available this year, in my opinion. So I think that's another potential, a real potential landing spot. But I don't think New Orleans is kind of in the same spot as.
Well, and he already declined the trade, right?
Well,
yeah, but
he declined the trade because of salary reasons. Like, he wanted to test the market and find out what his true value was. Like, it doesn't mean I'm not willing to pivot off of New Orleans just because he declined that. He declined it to stick it to the Raiders. He did not want the Raiders
to get a return,
to receive any compensation for him. Yeah. Like, he did that as a final middle finger to the organization that just kind of
gave him one in return
for the last 6 years. So that is what it is.
And I think New Orleans can save somewhere in the neighborhood of 19, 20 million, something like that this year by a post June 1st cut of Jameis. So, I mean, they could they can maneuver a fair bit of salary cap in one move right there. On that one,
Jameis thing, and honestly, they'll restructure Alvin Kamara's deal. They'll look at a couple others. Like, they have some draft picks, so they'll be able to bring some youth in and kind of go from there. So it's not insurmountable. Same thing with Tampa Bay. Like, Tampa Bay has a cap hit of like $34-35 million already. They can restructure that, right, and pay it out differently to, ease the burden of the salary cap, and then you're trying to figure out what else you're doing there. So it's all fake money, right?
Right. They can also rework either cut or rework Leonard Fournette as well. Like, there's some pretty decent chunk of change tied up on that one as well. Mm-hmm. Landing spot on Jimmy Garoppolo. What do you think?
If the Aaron Rodgers thing doesn't work out, I like the Jets for Jimmy Garoppolo. Like, just because it is familiar territory. I also still would not be surprised with Seattle. I still would not be surprised if Seattle and Geno Smith can't come to terms. Then Jimmy G to Seattle makes a lot of sense. He's familiar with the division. He'd have a chip on his shoulder against his old team twice a year. He's a guy that will facilitate a system and hand the ball off a billion times if that's what Pete Carroll wants to do. He's not turnover prone, right? So Pete Carroll will like that. It's not going to be forcing it, but we've seen Jimmy Garoppolo work so well with Debo and to an extent Ayuk. I think he can do something similar with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. Like, the running game's not going to be as strong in Seattle, but I think it's comparable enough that you could see Garoppolo have some success on that team.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that Seattle would be a team. I just think the reason why it didn't work out in the last place is because San Francisco, anytime they saw the Seattle area code, ringing up on the front office, they probably just ignored the call, when they were looking to trade Jimmy Garoppolo, because you're not going to do that. Like, that doesn't make any sense to give away but to do business within your own division like that, especially with the position that is as important as quarterback. So yeah, I think I really like Seattle for Jimmy Garoppolo. I think any number of teams are willing to have him there to facilitate either, a couple years as you try to bring in a young quarterback, or maybe you don't like where you're at this year, in terms of draft positioning, and you don't think that the quarterbacks that are there are your fit. And you get Garoppolo for 2-3 years, you can keep him, right? Still win some games. The problem is when you get Jimmy Garoppolo, you're not going to improve your draft position up, right? Because he's going to win you some games, I shouldn't say he's going to win you some games, but he's going to keep you in games that you'll probably win. And that's going to leave you in kind of that purgatory, the middle of the round. So you're going to have to do something else to get up towards the top to get top end QB talent. But I don't know. I think Seattle for Jimmy Garoppolo.
I could see that one. I do like the New York call on Jimmy G. Daniel Jones, what are we thinking on that one?
I think he's back with the Giants. I think he showed enough. I think Brian Dable liked him enough. We're not the biggest Daniel Jones supporters on this show, right?
No.
Like, it's more than clear. But I will and need to acknowledge the fact that he did an amazing job with zero help from his skill positions this year outside of Saquon Barkley.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the tight ends were hurt, the receivers were hurt. He was throwing to guys coming off the scrap pile and making them borderline fantasy relevant. And with the success that team had, and I think you see kind of the genius of Brian Dable and why the Giants brought him in to try and turn this ship around. And I think Jones showed him enough that it may not be a 5, 6, 7 year deal like what Jones Camp would want, but if you pay him, I think 26 is too low. I think you're going to offer him $35 million a year for 3 years, and it's going to be like 90% guaranteed to just really kind of cement the fact of, okay, here we are, and you have your built-in escalators if you need to, or the fact that you have a player team option for year number 4 or something like that to kind of extend that out. But that makes the most sense. I don't think he'll be able to get anything near monetarily speaking from any other organization besides what the Giants will do, whether it's tag him or find some sort of deal and pay him $30 to $35 million a year.
So I know that, Derek, you may not want to go this route, and if we want to backtrack later, we can. But the Giants do face a very, very interesting situation. They're going to have to sign either Daniel Jones or Saquon Barkley, because both of those dudes are free agents, and you can only use one franchise tag. So they're going to have to figure out which one that they want to
pay less and still keep for 1 year.
Well, at that point, right, it makes far more sense for you to get a deal in place with Daniel Jones, a 3-4 year type of deal, right?
I would agree with that.
You kick the can down the road, and Saquon, who actually was like fully healthy this year, has not been the case on him. Running backs, to steal one of my favorite phrases, running backs age like avocados in this league. So, at that point, I think that's the way you do it is you tag Saquon if you're having him come back and do what he does there, and you get the deal done with Daniel Jones.
So what I'm reading here shows that the Giants offered Saquon a deal worth around $12 million a year. Barkley was hoping for something more in the Christian McCaffrey $16 million a year. But if the Giants tag him, it's only $10.1 million.
It's a lot of bargaining power there.
Well, there's some bargaining power, and hell, that's close for the NFL to only be $4 million apart, right? That's close. You can throw a shit ton of escalators into that and kind of make that work for Barkley, which goes back to Derek's point, right? You ultimately you sign Jones, like you have to sign Jones. You can keep that tag because Jones being tagged, he's saying, okay, I'm making, top money. That's great. Barkley being tagged is not great. Like the NFL is moving away from these big deals. So, if he can get a 3 or 4 year deal he's 26. So if you get a 3 or 4 year deal and you're able to produce, you at least get some sort of decent payday going into your next round of negotiations and still stand a chance to be NFL viable, because if you take too much or if you fall flat, you're going to get cut anyway.
Right. And the $12 million a year isn't that far off, right? You look at like Joe Mixon, when he signed his deal was 4 years, $48 million. That's right at $12 million a year. Dalvin Cook's at like 12.6 type of deal. Both of those backs would command something similar on the open market there as well. So I think that is that 12 million number sounds a year sounds really right about right.
Yeah, and I think they might settle on something like 13.5 with bonuses and escalators.
Right,
and that's fair. I have no problem with that, based off of what he means to that team when healthy, and the when healthy thing is a big problem. But you're as good as what you've done for me lately, and lately Saquon Barkley performed at Pro Bowl level.
Certainly showed up and showed out this last season.
Yes, sir.
We can speak about. I'll throw out 2 more names of guys, and Derek, if we want to go again different direction. But I think the biggest name that's going to be out there, and it's a running back. So this is tough for NFL teams to sink money.
Hold your thought, and we'll move to running backs in a minute, because I want to hear your guys' thoughts on Geno after his kind of resurgence in Seattle, and then we can step away from some of the quarterback talk because no one wants to hear about Sam Darnold.
I think Geno's got a spot somewhere. Where that spot is, I don't know, and I don't think Geno's going to command 40 a year for that spot. But I do think that Geno has a spot in the league.
I think Geno's going to get 35 to 40 million a year on this deal coming up. Like that's what a quarterback runs. I get it. He's 32 years old, but that's still that's still a full contract ready to go. And he certainly showed up this season running it and kind of that redemption story on a guy that's just kind of managed to hang around the league and finally gets a shot and capitalizes on that one. So I think he's back in Seattle. I think that he's got a really good thing going there. The chemistry looks good. The coaching staff seems to like him. The coaching staff seems to like what he's able to do and how he's going to run that offense. Part of the other problem that you've got on that one, I forget his name. Who's Pete Carroll? There we go.
He's a forgettable fella.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so Pete Carroll likes to run an organization a certain way and likes to play offense a certain way. And Geno Smith fits exactly what it is that he's looking to do and what he wants to do there, far more than what we've seen other quarterbacks out there do. And any other quarterback they're going to bring in that they would be paying right about the same amount anyway. Now you're messing with some of that chemistry and some of that locker room there as well. I think Geno is staying put in Seattle, and I think you're going to see him get probably a 3-year, call it a 4-year, $155 million type of deal.
Okay. Who do you think gets more money in their next contract? Geno Smith or Jimmy Garoppolo? Who gets paid more?
If Jimmy G's going to New York, he's going to get paid.
Okay.
And he'll get the bigger payday there.
I agree. The Jets are so desperate to have any sort of just stable at quarterback right now that's a position they're absolutely willing to overpay, in my opinion, to get their guy and not have to play, Cirque du Soleil with quarterback for another 3, 4, 7 years.
Right.
So if you're Seattle and you can get Jimmy Garoppolo for cheaper than you can get Geno, do you do it?
No, I'm sticking with the guy that I know that's been in the locker room. All of the things, right? Like, it's a known quantity. I know how to deal with the guy. I know how he's going to work, how he's going to show up. And for everything that we've read coming out of Seattle, it worked out very brilliantly for all parties concerned there. I don't think so. I think Geno fits what that team is looking to do, and just from a personality standpoint, I think fits the locker room incredibly well.
So I'm going to pivot, and I'm going to say yes. If they can get Garoppolo cheaper, they're going to bring in Garoppolo, and then that extra money, I will go a step further and say that they will spend the extra money on that quarterback position for Cooper Rush, because you can at least have 2 quarterbacks with a similar playing style on your roster, as opposed to going from Geno to who? Like
Drew Lock.
Well, Drew Lock. I think
but Drew Lock is not the same quarterback. You'd have to run a completely different system.
But who do you go? Right? Is it Teddy? Like, is Teddy the comp to Geno? I don't think so. Old Teddy was before the knee injury, but now that Teddy's a statue, it doesn't play. Like, you go through this list, like Mike White, like Kyle Allen, Taylor Heineke. Like, I mean, who's your backup quarterback? Who that makes sense behind Geno right now?
That doesn't drastically change the way you have to play offense. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think for me that plays into it is, hell, I can bring in Jimmy G. We'll bring in Cooper Rush to back him up and protect ourselves from injury. We saw what Cooper could do in Dallas behind Dak when he went down. And as I'm saying all this, I'm realizing that Chad Henne, who was the backup for the Chargers, right, is
Kansas City. He retired.
No, I thought that was it's Chase Daniel. Chase Daniel was the backup for
there you go.
In the Chargers. I think he's a free agent too. So maybe Cooper Rush follows Kellen Moore. Like, see, and this is part of the thing, right? You go down the rabbit hole of
right.
Well, I could see Cooper Rush following Kellen Moore because he knows he has success. Like, he knows that offense and can help immediately as far as getting the rest of that team up to speed. So part of the things, but again, spitballing. If they can get Jimmy G cheaper, I think they take it. I think they like the fact that he came from the Niners and you can stick it to that organization. Like I've said before, I think it's easier to find a backup that fits Jimmy G's style of play better than Geno Smith, which allows for a smoother transition if there happens to be an injury or something that happens, and you're not ripping your playbook up and starting over, and you're not trying to force a square peg into a round hole at that point.
Very good.
I think that is what Seattle would do too. I think this all comes down to dollars and cents with who they go after. Because I think if you do get Jimmy G for cheaper, and I think we agree that Jimmy G is going to go for cheaper than Geno Smith will. Is that fair?
I think they're going to be close. This is one of those, I think realistically you're going to see them sign a deal where ultimately it's 1 to 2 million of difference per year type of thing. Okay. The guaranteed money might be a little bit different, but for the most part, I think when it's all said and done, the average is about the same.
Yeah, because there's only so many spots too,
right?
Like you have Seattle, you have New York, you have New Orleans, you have
Atlanta,
Tampa Bay. I'm not sold that Atlanta is going to be active in this quarterback market. Like,
Ritter's the answer down there.
I don't know that Ritter's necessarily the answer, but if you already know you're rebuilding, why spend a lot of money at quarterback when you have a young guy that you can develop and see what a full offseason does for him, and just kind of retool it. Like you start with Desmond Ridder and you have someone like I don't know, Sam Darnold or Andy Dalton or Mike White play behind Desmond Ridder. Like it's not dynamic necessarily, but it allows the young guy to develop, and you can truly see what you have before you invest $35 to $40 million on, a 30-plus-year-old quarterback who is not elite. Like, they're good, but they're not elite.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. They get you in Alex's favorite spot, just good enough to be mediocre.
It's just that purgatory, right? And you just fledgling.
Yeah.
Purgatory of good.
Yeah.
That's what we'll start. Just POG. They get you to POG.
Yeah. A purgatory of good.
All righty. Alex, you keep wanting to take us to running backs.
I'm gonna take us to running. We already touched on Saquon a little bit, but the biggest name that's out there in free agency has got to be for the running back position, Josh Jacobs.
Oh, I was gonna say Jamal Williams. He broke a Barry Sanders record, man. Like,
right?
Okay.
If
you're hold on, let's set this discussion up. If you're an NFL team, okay, how much are you willing to pay for Josh Jacobs' service?
Slim to none. I'll draft a running back in the second, third round and call it a day.
$12 to $13 million a year, the same you're paying Saquon.
You're in that same, and so I think here's the harsh reality of the league now is that running backs feel like they should be worth that Christian McCaffrey number, right? But there are maybe two guys, maybe three guys in the league that are Christian McCaffrey production, right?
But ultimately you're going to have that skill set, right?
Right.
Like the ability to play
in terms of production, right? There's Derrick Henry.
But that's irrelevant with how the Players Association works, though. And I get what you're after. Like your train of thought isn't wrong. Only that if you're just going off of stats, right? But the way these player unions work and the next man up and everything else, they're always trying to pave the way in the next guy. Here's why I think Jacobs garners the same amount of money. Is he played 80 less snaps than Saquon Barkley did last year. He had 340 more yards rushing. He had 2 more touchdowns, and he had 62 more receiving yards. He statistically, excuse me as I trip over myself, better than Saquon. Okay. Like the Raiders, for all intents and purposes, if they had quarterback figured out, should bring him back. But I think that's going to put him in cap hell. Like, I don't know that they're going to be able to. So now, what about Carolina? Like, Carolina's been grooving and kind of shaking here, right? And putting some things together and seeing how that works out for them. So, Carolina could be a possible option. I think that you could look at I guess I wouldn't be surprised if oh, shoot, I'm tripping over myself now. The Bears, right? And put another like David Montgomery. I could see them kind of do away with that. Or Philadelphia would be another one because Miles Sanders is a free agent. Mm-hmm. You could bring Josh Jacobs into there, have him kind of be that lead back. I don't see that. That wasn't their identity this year, but with the new offensive coordinator coming in, Philly's identity is going to change a little bit. So maybe they're not running 3 or 4 different running backs. Maybe they feel like they can take Jacobs in because of his body structure and his ability to show that he can play through this stuff for a full season. And you're only running him and Gainwell, and you don't need Boston Scott necessarily, right? Like, I think there's some different things that you can do there. But ultimately, him and Saquon should be paid damn near equally, right? Like, Saquon's coveted by the Giants, and if they can't get a deal done with Saquon, I think the Giants go after Josh Jacobs with the exact same contract that they just offered Saquon.
Okay.
Like, it is just my opinion, right? I don't have any proof behind that, but hell yeah, if I'm Brian Dable, I'm like, oh shit, this guy's comparable. Like, this guy does a lot of the same things. He's not a troublemaker. Like, he's good for the locker room. He puts his nose down. He grinds it out. Like, you know, he is another back that is elusive, maybe not quite as much as Saquon is at his best, but he is elusive and has just as big of a nose for the end zone as Saquon does. Like, hell, you're not losing anything by pivoting from Saquon to Josh Jacobs.
Right.
Yeah, it could be interesting. We'll see if the Raiders do. Again, the Raiders could tag him for 10.1, which is a bargain at this rate. The thing that Josh Jacobs has going for him, he is only 25 years old.
Right.
Right. Like,
yeah, he's a full year younger, right?
Yeah. And so that he does have that going for him, which probably makes him a little bit more attractive to teams willing to make that investment on what they will give him, because you feel like you've got an extra year out of him. The second running back, which I don't think is a huge name, but there is some interesting implications here because he did get hurt in his last game of the year. And he will be coming off of an injury. And I think that he would have commanded more money had it not happened the way that it did with the injury. But Tony Pollard, do you think that Cowboys tag him?
The Cowboys have got a whole lot of issues that they've got to figure out.
They really do.
They've got
Schultz
less
is a free agent. They've got a ton.
And they've got less than $1 million in cap space. Like, that's part of the problem. And that's one of those that I think you'll see Zeke's contract either get restructured or Zeke get, see you later type of deal. So it'll be interesting to see what Tony Pollard does again with that injury coming off of that thing. I don't know what he necessarily commands in the open market right now.
About $9 million.
I would agree with that before the injury. But
I'd tell you now. And it's because he's 24 still.
That's true.
Yes, he has low mileage, being behind Zeke for every year of his career, arguably except this one where they were truly kind of 1A and 1B.
Yeah.
Low mileage. He's only 24. He's explosive. He receives well out of the backfield. He's not quite as dynamic as Zeke is in pass pro, but you can kind of work through some of that. Teams have to dance around that all the time. But $9 million. So, I mean, it saves you, 3 to 4 based off of what we're talking about with Saquon and Josh Jacobs.
Yeah.
I mean, $3 to $4 million saved is another. It's a solid depth piece, right? Like, if you're not sold at a position, that can get you depth that you need on either the line or at a skill position where if a guy goes down, have a really solid backup.
That's true. That is very true.
I don't know. I don't know that he comes back to Dallas. And I think if he does go back to Dallas, it's on a tag, right? Because of their cap situation. Dallas had to tag Dalton Schultz last year. So, like, that's where they're at.
Yep.
He's, Schultz is probably gone, right? Like, so you lose a receiving option that way. With realistically,
they really like Hendershot, though. Like, I mean,
sure.
I think Schultz is best for fantasy with the Cowboys as we go down this rabbit hole. I think he's best with the Cowboys. But because the Cowboys do like Hendershot, I think they are willing to let Dalton Schultz walk. And, he's a guy. If the Jags want to get a slight bit younger, I think they get very comparable, maybe even a little bit better statistical output from Dalton Schultz in Jacksonville than they got out of Evan Ingram.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At that point, though, Dalton Schultz probably 14, 15 mil a year would be my guess on what he's going to sign for, which I would imagine Evan Ingram's going to be about in that same ballpark when they go there. So that becomes some of that. Which way do they like, and which way do they ultimately want to go there?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm pulling that up right now. Kind of my little tracker.
Gotcha.
There are a few tight ends though, as we we'll talk about the tight end position, but there are a few tight ends out there that have some name recognition as far as tight ends go, right? Dalton Schultz is out there, Mike Gesicki's out there. Those are two right off the bat that those are two guys that and Evan Ingram, sorry to not include the same guy that we were just talking about, but so there's three tight ends, which again in terms of fantasy, and we handled this well last week of what the good old boys thought process is on fantasy, which is going to be really unfortunate because we all play in the same league and we're all going to have the same thought process on tight end. But if it's not Travis Kelce, it's not worth your time. Yeah, it's not worth your time until much later. But those three guys, I mean, those are three impactful dudes that'll have, they'll still be on an NFL roster next year. It's just, will they be back with the team that currently has their rights?
Yeah, that'll be interesting there. I don't know that you see Gesicki necessarily down there in Miami. He's not. From what he's going to,
I'm telling Miami to kick rocks.
Yes,
you guys have bastardized my talent and my ability to kind of showcase what you drafted me to be with this new regime. There's no way I'm staying down there. I'm trying to think where I would like to see him go. I think he could be an interesting add-on for, honestly, it could be an interesting add-on for the Chiefs, right? What is Travis Kelce's feeling about the future? And those are conversations that we don't know, right? But the Chiefs are going to have with him. How long do you think you have? We're not trying to push you out the door, but we need to plan for our future. How long do you think you have? And if the Chiefs are just going to keep putting guys in, what a crazy cool offense Andy Reid could come up with Mike Gesicki and Travis Kelce and run it in
a spread 12 personnel.
Yeah, you run a spread 12. So it's taking what Bill Belichick did with Gronk and Aaron Hernandez and essentially putting it on steroids because you have an offensive mind behind it, not just something that's different. And often gone, those two guys, and then you have Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney on the outside.
Right.
That's pretty damn interesting. At least to me it is. I'd buy into that offense.
That would be something else, for sure.
Just not.
I like it. Any other thoughts on tight ends before we head over to the wide receivers?
I think there's some interesting things here. I'm interested to see what Hayden Hurst does if he's going to re-sign with Cincinnati. I think he's kind of been bounced around, right? He got traded from Baltimore down to Atlanta. We thought he was going to pop. He did fairly well until they drafted Kyle Pitts, right? And then that kind of went out the window. And then this year, I thought he was very serviceable in Cincinnati. And for a guy who is arguably the fifth option on that team at times, outside of, Chase, Higgins, Boyd, Mixon, and then Hurst, I thought he performed really well. And it's a team where he knows that they're going to pass a lot. He's a good blocker, but he was able to sneak out and have a pretty sound statistical season. And at age 30, this is kind of his last hurrah. So why not attach I shouldn't say that for a tight end. They've been lasting a bit longer, but why not attach it to a team that is in position to continuously make runs into the playoffs? Like at the end of your career, that's kind of what you go for, right? So I could see him hopping back on with Cincinnati.
Yeah. I like it. Any thoughts as far as some of the wide receivers? Not necessarily a huge name class of free agent wide receivers out there.
It's a pretty weak class of NFL, experienced wide receivers, right? Like it's a pretty weak class.
Your big names out there are going to be Alan Lazard, Jacoby Myers, Juju Smith-Schuster. Yeah.
Mac Hollins, Paris Campbell, your buddy Greg Dortch.
Yep.
Hey,
like
Shine hero.
Darius Slayton. I mean,
DJ Chark,
Nelson Aguilar.
I know, but that's the thing. Look, this article that I'm reading that has conveniently placed some of the top wide receiver, top free agents. Like it still has Odell Beckham Jr. Listed there, and like that's kind of where things are at with the wide receiver free agency. Is that the dude that didn't even play last year and went on kind of a tour to interview with everybody is still like listed as a plausible person that could get signed, because like those are the options in terms of free agent wide receivers. I don't think a lot of teams really need to look. I think with the amount of wide receivers that we have seen coming out of college the last 4 years, right? A lot of these dudes are still on rookie deals that are
another very strong receiver
right
class coming
and
in.
so these NFL teams, I don't know that necessarily like wide receivers. Wide receiver might be the next, running back in terms of the way that the position is going. I wouldn't be surprised if it's, you get a contract, you hope for a second one, but it's not guaranteed. Whereas how often was that the case even 5 years ago? There's so many good ones coming out of college. College is producing a lot of good wide receivers now.
They are. Although this year's wide receiver draft class is not
last year's.
Yeah, or the year before, right? This is actually a really good running back draft class. So it's going to make things even more interesting for these running backs. So here's a thought with these wide receivers. And I'm going to go back to the New York Giants because it is a position of need for them. They save a crap ton of money by cutting Kenny Golladay right now.
Yep.
Like to the tune of $14 million plus.
Mm-hmm.
So right now they have just under $47 million to spend. You cut Kenny Golladay, and that takes it to $63 million basically to spend in cap space for this year. You got to take basically what you're gonna save by cutting Golladay. You turn around and put that into Saquon, give or take a couple million, right? So you're back down to this $47 million, maybe $49 million and change. Why not take a run at Jacoby Myers and Juju and like a DJ Chark? Like just completely retool it, because Darius Slayton, Sterling Shepard, those are both free agents. Kenny Golladay has been a freaking bust, and he's the second highest paid guy on your team right now. Barf. Like, you have plenty of room to play with, and you still have all your draft picks. Like, you haven't given any of those away, so you can still build depth underneath that. So
right.
I can see the Giants taking a run at the top two guys on this list, and they flirted with the idea of Odell, but I don't think Odell goes back to New York. Like, I don't think he's sold on that. But hell, Juju, Jacoby Myers, I think that Brian Dable could do something with that, right? They're not A-list players, but they're better than what they had, and you can take really solid B players and make them look good with Dable understanding how his quarterback works.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I like that thought. I like that process there.
That would be something. If
Yeah.
that actually comes to fruition, Kevin, you and I need to have a chat about next week's lottery numbers.
You think it's that much of a long shot?
No, but I would like to have your insight on the lottery numbers.
He's simply saying that he likes your prognostication skills at that point.
Yeah,
So I like it.
I mean, I think
it makes sense. It makes total sense.
yeah, I'm interested to see where some of these guys go because a lot of them are just pieces, right? Like, where does Alan Lazard go? Like, does he? I think he could make sense in. I think he could make sense in Kansas City if Kansas City doesn't bring Juju back.
Right.
It's just that it's a different type of piece. I think he's played with, kind of big name, high profile quarterback with Aaron Rodgers. He's not going to be asked to be the guy. Like, he's just going to be a piece of that offense. But I think he can do statistically everything that, Juju did for the most part. He's not quite as shifty, but I think he gives you a better deep ball presence than Juju does because of his size.
Yeah, I would agree with that. As far as cap casualties, anybody out there that you think is going to be a surprise name on here, or a name that's worth keeping an eye out as we start getting into some of this?
I don't know about surprise. I think we touched on a couple just briefly, right? I think Kenny Galladay could be a cap casualty. I think Jameis Winston could be a cap casualty. I think that
Ryan Tannehill could be a big one.
Right. That's been rumored as well. So I don't know that there's necessarily like big names, right? I think the big thing, right, wrong, or indifferent, I think everyone's still going to be paying attention to Aaron Rodgers and what goes on there. Like, it's another year, another cycle. What is it with these Green Bay quarterbacks at the end of their career? And everything combined, they've won 2 Super Bowls. Like, it's not.
And in fairness, the sample size is small.
30 years worth of quarterback play.
Right, but it is 2 dudes.
30 years worth of quarterback play. Hall of Fame, All Pro, 2 Super Bowls to show for it, and they seem to go. They seem to have this weird idea that.
I'll tell you what it is.
I'm listening.
They are big fish in a very small pond out there in Green Bay. That is a very small pond in Green Bay. They are big fish, and I think that goes to their heads. I think if
I'm
you
not going
live,
to disagree with that.
I think if you live in LA or New York, you are not big fish. There are people making what you're making, not doing what you're doing, right? There are circles that you can run in where you're not the, most expensive person in town. You're not making the most money in that room, right? Green Bay, I think there's a self-inflated sense of worth, or an inflated sense of self-worth. That's the phrase. Because you are big fish in a very tiny pond. And I think it is unique to Green Bay, right? Other NFL markets are in major metropolitan areas. Green Bay is not. They're not even considered to be in Milwaukee. So I think that I would be willing to think that that is not a far-fetched idea. They are big fish in a very small pond, and that leads to some intense decision making and waffling.
I mean, because you look at it, just about every other quarterback kind of gets told that their time is done, and it does not seem to play the.
And there's not an owner there. That's another thing. Like, there's not one person. Granted, now they have their their president and everything.
Gutekunst.
Whatever.
Gutekunst or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. But like
Brian. His name's Brian.
Yeah. Brian G. Old Brian G. But there isn't an owner that is coming down on that, right? Like, that is a city-owned, investor-owned team that doesn't have just one owner
that wants to do what's best for them. How many careers has Jerry Jones ended because he could, right?
Less
How many
than
times?
George Steinbrenner.
Sure, exactly. But again, another person because he could, because he was done with you, because your agent rubbed him the wrong way or whatever, right? You don't really have that in Green Bay because there isn't an owner that is an end all be all because his name signs the checks.
I get that, but
His or hers.
Kansas City. Okay, I'm going to use Kansas City as an example. And while Kansas City is a bigger town and a bigger city than Green Bay is, well, they're not that dissimilar.
No, but there's still an owner, right?
Well,
There's still
so that's where
somebody
the
who
argument
is
is
making
different.
those moves.
But you don't think Patrick Mahomes is a massive fish in that pond? I don't give a crap who the Cardinals are, or the Royals are starting as
they're
their
not.
ace,
There's
right?
nobody there from the Royals.
Yeah, but I'm saying that's what you're dealing with. It's not the MLS and the Kansas City Wizards. Like,
Yeah, but there's
Maybe-
oil guys, right? There's tycoons. There's other people.
Patrick Mahomes, and then
I
there's
understand.
everybody else in Kansas City.
But here's the deal: there's still owner of the Kansas City Chiefs, right?
Yeah,
That
the
is
whole
above Patrick Mahomes. I totally see your point here, Kevin. I'm not. I'm trying to make my
family.
point.
It's all
sound
because
better
there's no
with other
right. Well, I'm just saying. So it all
information.
comes back to the point that there's no owner to officially say,
Hey, we're done with you.
yay or nay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe that's more of the point than the one I was making earlier. There just isn't an owner to say we're done with you, right? Tom Brady had to leave New England because why? We're done with you. We've moved on. Bob Kraft loved Tom Brady. Bob Kraft wants Tom Brady to retire as a Patriot, but we're done with you. We're moving on.
I think that was Bill. That wasn't the owner. That was the coach. And Tom got tired of doing what the coach said.
Also, bad example from guy who retired and then didn't retire. But
yeah, I mean, and we could have a whole nother episode just about the Tom Brady piece, right? But I do think it's interesting. But I think it's too. I think the owner piece is interesting, but I think there's just two guys who have crappy personalities and, like you said, have an overinflated sense of self-worth.
right.
Like, I think that line really does sum up the last 6 minutes of our topic here is these guys are windbags. And as talented as they are, you're 38 years old. Shit or get off the pot, man. Like, if you want to play, say I want to play. If you don't want to play, say no, I'm good. And if you want to give the middle finger to the Green Bay Packers, then just do it. Like, worse has been said, done, and prophesied over, the nation than what you're going to do to a sports franchise. Who cares?
Right.
Move on so that way we can figure out what we're doing about fantasy next year.
Yeah, for the love of God, think about us.
Think about the
us.
fantasy. Oh, I love it. Alrighty. Some other ones when I was going through some cap casualties, I think we're going to see some potential interesting ones out of Cincinnati. Joe Burrow, they're going to have to get a deal done with him and in place, and that's going to be a fairly big deal there. Jamar Chase also following next season there as well. Two guys that I think have had some decent fantasy impact and could be potential cap casualties. Joe Mixon could be potentially one of those guys. They save about $12 million going that route. Same thing with Tyler Boyd. Not quite the hit there, but a pretty big salary cap impact that could be had from letting him head out as well.
Yeah, but I think a lot of that work has to be done next season, right? And do we get a higher cap after next year? When does the cap go up again?
Every year.
It's refigured every single year.
So I think that those are – I think Cincinnati kicks the can, right? Because Burrow will be in year 3, correct? Or he'll be in year 4.
Going into year 4, so you're going to have to decide to either pick up the 5th year or get a deal done.
You
which
pick
is
up
which
the
you
5th
could,
year, and then you
Yeah.
slowly start about working.
yeah, and then you worry about that. Same with
do you have the luxury with Jamar Chase?
Jamar Chase, you're going. Yeah, you took him.
You have the fifth
fifth
year
overall.
option too. Yeah.
Yeah, they took him 5th overall. So yes.
So you have again. I think that's a kick the can and try to make another run at this thing with the guys you got, and then you worry about that. That's future Cincinnati Bengals problem. Present.
T. Higgins though was only on a 4-year deal, and I believe we're coming up on that one there as well. Like they've got a lot of things kind of up in the air on that if they're looking to cement some of these things long term.
Sure. Yeah. I think though that near term they're just going to try to win that because they are shockingly, and I mean, 3 years ago when they were picking number 1 and number 5, right. We did not think that they would be in win now mode
right.
this early on, and it turns out they are.
Right.
So they're in win now mode, and this window I think is closing because those contracts are calling.
Right.
And so yeah, there will be that's going to be an interesting situation there. It is possible though. We saw Philadelphia do it.
True. That's very true. Any other thoughts on cap casualties? Any other thoughts on some free agency here?
Well, there's not free agency and it's not a cap casualty, but it kind of was like, I almost don't know that it's real because, I heard it and then there wasn't much made of it. But how about Eric Bieniemy?
Right. Heading to the Commanders.
Going to the Commanders. How much of an impact does that have on both of the organizations? How much of an impact does that have on Kansas City? Which I don't think is huge, right? Because that was Andy Reid's offense, right?
Right, and really, I think the reason he makes the move is the point that you're making, right? Like that's the question everybody's always had is, how much of that is Bieniemy, how much of it is Andy Reid, how much of it is Patrick Mahomes type of thing,
right?
Instead of the three of them working incredibly well together.
And now he's going to have a situation where we don't know who his quarterback's going to be, right?
Now, because Carson Wentz is likely going to be a cap casualty. $26 million they can save this year.
Yeah. And,
it's going to be Sam Howell.
Yeah.
You say, he's better than Justin Ritter.
But here's the thing. He is, and I think Ron Rivera is going to take the Bruce Arians route, right? Where he will coach for a little bit more. They brought in Bieniemy. They gave him that associate head coach title, right? As well as offensive coordinator. And I think there is a progression plan like there was in Tampa Bay with Bruce. And I don't know that there was ever that progression plan with Andy Reid in place. Because let's be honest, I think Andy Reid will coach until I don't know that he ever retires. Not to be crass, but I think
he'll be 80 years old still out there.
He'll still be out there. Yeah.
Go the Wade Phillips route, right?
Right.
Wade Phillips was definitely one of the older coaches.
Wade Phillips still out there in the
XFL. I saw him on the sidelines.
Yes,
I was
sir.
like, is that Wade Phillips? Sure is Wade Phillips. But like he can coach in Kansas City until he decides he no longer wants to coach there. It's not going to be, he has brought them to Super Bowls. He has Patrick Mahomes for longer. Mahomes will be in Kansas City long after Andy Reid's gone, right? So he can ride that train for as long as he wants to ride it. I think Andy Reid is in control of that, and there was never going to be a succession for Eric Bieniemy. So now we see Bieniemy go to Washington. How much of an impact does that have on Washington, where we get to actually see how good of a play caller and OC, Eric Bieniemy actually is, without the shadow of Andy Reid over top, and how much does that impact Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid in Kansas City? Which, I guess, here's the question: which is the bigger impact, the subtraction of Bieniemy or the addition of Bieniemy?
I don't. The subtraction will
Bigger
be there.
Impact?
Yes.
Bigger
The
impact.
subtraction of Bieniemy from Kansas City or the addition of Bieniemy in Washington?
It'll be the addition because
Right.
the subtraction ultimately I don't think means a whole hell of a lot.
It's fair. Right,
I
because
mean-
it was Andy Reid's offense, right?
Yeah. Now,
Right.
I'm not convinced that the addition means a whole hell of a lot either. Like, don't get me wrong, it's a bigger impact, but I mean, we're talking like minuscule. Like, I don't think bringing in Eric Bieniemy wins you more games. Like, you're hoping to take some of that insight and hopefully push it down Sam Howell's throat and see if you can catch lightning in a bottle after he played well in week 18. Like that's ultimately what you're after. You're not bringing Heineke back. Most likely you'll spend a draft pick on somebody,
Right.
right? And maybe you bring one of these retread free agent quarterbacks in. Like, Andy Dalton's not sexy, but he's cheap, right? He's a veteran quarterback who can at least speak to Sam Howell. So I don't know. It didn't blow me away. Like it didn't. If I'm Eric Bieniemy, I'd rather bet on my career in Kansas City. Like if I'm going to be an OC and things aren't changing, I'd rather be an OC on a Super Bowl winner than a team that's, going to be fighting and trying to find ways to compete for a playoff spot.
In an organization that likely might be changing ownerships there
Might
as well.
be changing ownership. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like I don't understand why he thought that was best for his career. And I think that he's gotten screwed along the way, but him getting screwed along the way by the other 31 teams in the NFL is not Kansas City's fault. Like that, Kansas City didn't owe him anything. They set him up. They allowed him to learn under one of the brightest offensive minds that we've seen in the NFL's history. With Andy Reid, he's been able to be a part of 2 Super Bowl championships and a 4 AFC championships. 5 AFC.
Played in 3 Super Bowls.
Yeah. I mean, it's nothing against Bieniemy, but the Chiefs didn't owe him anything else. But I don't know why you go to the Commanders. Like, and the Ravens weren't the best option either. So don't get me wrong there. Like it's the South Park episode, right? And you guys
sandwich.
yeah, you guys know what I'm saying without me even having to verbalize it. But that's what it is. Like, what? I don't understand the jump. Like, just the move. It's a lateral move. Like, to a organization that has more chaos, more turmoil, more, cloudiness to its future than where you're at. Like, I don't understand that other than it's the coach's version of betting on yourself. Like you can do this and you hope that you're the hot commodity because if Sam Howell does come out, right, and this is a lot of ifs, but if Sam Howell does come out and he throws for, 4,000 yards and 32 touchdowns and only has, 12 or 13 interceptions, and the Commanders, I keep wanting to say the other name, but the Commanders, are in the playoffs and everything else, is that enough? Like, is that enough to get Bieniemy a head coaching job? And if it's not, then what?
Right. Then what? Then he can only be labeled as the world's worst interview. Like that's the only way.
Right. Okay. I mean, I don't know if there's a good way for me to say this, and I'm going to try and say it without getting us into hot water here.
Don't get us canceled.
Oh, it's canceled. But as much as we think Eric Bieniemy has earned an opportunity to be a head coach in the NFL, I do not believe that Eric Bieniemy is the most qualified minority coach who does not have an NFL head coaching position.
Oh, that's
like, I mean, is that safe, Derek? You're going to speak to the lawyers afterwards, I'm sure. But
well, I mean, at that point, right? Like you think about it from the standpoint, Brian Flores out there still not having a head coaching job after doing the job successfully, right? Like resume in itself.
Do you buy the snip that he said he had head coaching offers and turned them down?
I don't know that I do that as much as
there's I don't know why he would say that.
Yeah, why would you say it if it wasn't true?
Like, I don't understand that side of things, but nevertheless, I mean, Raheem Morris, D'Amico Ryans, like, he made sense. I understand his soft spot for Houston playing there, but again, a hot minority head coach that was able to get a shot. So I don't know that it for a while it felt like it was a minority thing with Bieniemy, right? And we did touch on that on this show 2 years ago.
Right.
And briefly kind of breezed past it last year. I don't know that I'm in it's because of he's a minority camp anymore. More so, I think there's guys who are just more qualified right now. Like, they just seem to be able to do more with less.
And maybe it's a personality thing, right? Not everybody's cut out to be a head coach in the NFL, right? Maybe he hasn't figured out how to be.
It can't be a personality thing. For the Broncos hired fucking Nathaniel Hackett. Like, you're gonna
But he had a personality
later, Derek. But I mean, the Broncos hired Nathaniel Hackett. Like, come on. Like, it's great. You're a nice guy. Like, I believe Eric Bieniemy can draw X's and O's as well as Nathaniel Hackett can.
I'd say better.
Probably better.
Okay.
Significantly better. Well,
I would say that Eric Bieniemy
could
probably relay a play call before the 40-second or 25-second clock winds out.
Regardless of whether or not the crowd is counting down the play clock to help out.
Giving you a shot clock countdown.
Oh my gosh.
No. Anyway, moving on.
Anyway,
Yeah.
last thing. I think Zeke is still a potential casualty, right? Like, I think that is the name we haven't really touched on.
Yeah.
I don't think that happens. I think he restructures. Like, I do believe that he wants to stay with Dallas. I do believe that the Cowboys want Zeke to stay. And so whether they're going to turn some of that money into bonus money or how they're going to work that out, I do think that they restructure at least for the next couple of years and bring Pollard back.
Right. I mean, he's even though they could cut him and move on for a savings, that's still a big dead cap number for Zeke this year. 12 million, just under 12 million on a dead cap hit if they were to cut him and move on. Granted, his cap hit if he plays is 16 million. So yes, you get a $4 million savings, but that 12 million dead cap hit on a running back's position is a huge dead cap number. So I think you're right. I think that we see them restructure. I think they move some money around. They get some of that stuff going there.
And he said that he's willing to restructure, right? Like, I think that's part of what it is. And my guess is they try and backload. I think they restructure some of the bonus money. And I think they put some more guaranteed salary into his 2026 season, right? That the Cowboys just can't get out of no matter what, knowing that he's probably not going to last that long with Dallas. I think Jerry will pull the plug by then. Yeah. But just to ensure that, hey, at the end of this, instead of just having 16 million that's not guaranteed whatsoever, like, let's flip some of this over. Let's make some of this guaranteed money because I'm doing this to help y'all out. And I think they find a way to work that out.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Any other thoughts on any of the coaching changes, anything like that before we get to final thoughts?
Not particularly. Like, special teams coaches going to be special teams coordinators don't really excite me, and maybe it should. But for someone who really likes the coaching carousel and what it means, I have a hard time understanding what these special teams coaches mean for fantasy. I understand for the game, but for fantasy purposes, like the Baltimore Ravens having a new special teams coach, like, that's not going to change my opinion on Justin Tucker.
Right.
Just not.
Dude's still gonna hit bombs.
Yep. Yeah, and
make a lot of them,
and be an opera singer. Like,
alrighty. Well, guys, that's gonna take us down here to the end of it. Any final thoughts out there for the viewers and listeners?
No, I'm not going to take up any more time. I think you just heard my final thoughts in the last 5 minutes of me airbagging what I thought about Eric Bieniemy.
Alex, take us home.
And Nathaniel Hackett. I am going to try and make an effort to watch some more XFL.
Obviously, USFL, we got a couple months still, but I'm going to try to watch some more XFL and see if there's some more quirks of the game that I would hope that the NFL adopts. And I will see if I don't think anybody's getting signed from the XFL into the NFL. I would be shocked. It was fun to go and look at the quarterbacks. Like when the XFL announced all their rosters, their final rosters, I went and looked at, all of them to see if there were any names that I recognized. There were a handful, but really it was just fun to look at the quarterbacks and be like, oh, okay. That was supposed to be a guy, and now he's in the XFL. But it was pretty fun.
The Pirate.
Yep, he's there. Kyle Sloter, right? Everybody remember Kyle Sloter?
I
Denver
still
fans
say
remember Kyle Sloter.
Should have started Kyle Sloter instead of cutting him and letting Minnesota pick him up.
I agree with you. Yeah, he's still kicking in the XFL. But yeah, that was fun, and I'm gonna make an effort, and hopefully I have something to bring back next week a little bit more. I do work on Saturdays, and Sundays are reserved for relationship right now, because Sundays before were very much taken over by football. So it's gonna be hard to convince her that I still want to watch football, even though we just watched the Super Bowl together, right? Like
you can tell the married guys versus the non-married guy there.
Yeah, the soon-to-be married guy. I will, and the other thing that I have to contend with is that
put a decade in and let us know.
Exactly.
I watch a lot of hockey, and that's like a non-negotiable for me. So like, if there's a hockey game on, I'm watching that. I'm watching the hockey game, and so like, if I add football on Sundays on top of that during hockey season, that like extended, that's a tough sell.
Are the Avs going to make the playoffs?
They should. They should.
Are they going to be able to make a run at repeating?
They should. They have, if they stay healthy, they've got the talent to do it. They didn't lose much from last year.
Although there's their star just got into concussion protocol.
Yeah, Cale McCarr just went back into concussion protocol, which is not good. Need him to be healthy. Gabe Landeskog,
in 2 weeks.
Yeah, Gabe Landeskog has not played all year.
So he's supposed to be back like a month ago.
He can come back. I think there might have been a setback. I'm not 100% on that, but
you're my resident hockey guy. How do you not know about this stuff?
Because I've been a poor resident hockey guy. It's hard to find hockey down here in the Lone Star State. There's one team, and not a lot of it on television. So, but the Avs could get back, a couple All-Stars come playoff push time, and that would be very helpful, because not a lot of teams are going to get a couple All-Stars back.
I like it.
Fair enough.
So to Alex, I know that you also keep us apprised on all the baseball happenings as those start coming up here as well.
Yeah, and I think I was wrong last week about pitchers and catchers. I think that some of them had reported. I don't think that all of them had, but now like everybody's in camp now.
See, so I wasn't crazy.
I think no, you were not. You were not. You were not.
Are you ready for a super hot baseball take?
Yeah, let's hear it.
No one cares.
Yeah.
The season should be 54 games long.
That should not be 54, but it definitely should not be 162.
I can give you very good reasoning why it should be 54 instead of 162.
Sprint seasons are better.
I agree.
Are you ready for this reasoning?
Go ahead.
The best teams in baseball the best historic teams in baseball still lose 54 games. The worst teams in baseball history still somehow manage to win 54 games. So your very best team. So every team's going to win 54 games. Every team's going to lose 54 games. Why don't we throw 54 on both sides out of it, and we just leave the middle third in there for the final 54 games?
So it's funny that you would present it that way, because I don't remember who it was, but there's a manager, might have been Tommy Lasorda, could have been somebody else. So if I misquote here, but there is a saying in baseball. It's very famous among the baseball players. Over the course of a 162 game season, every team is guaranteed to win at least 54, right? Every team is guaranteed to lose at least 54.
It's what you do with the other 54 that matter.
So why don't we just play the 54 games that matter and call it a day?
Hey, you talk to those owners who are signing those $600 million contracts to try and get them to lose 54 or 130 games of.
I don't understand how their cap numbers continuously go up.
They don't have a cap. They don't have a cap.
Ratings plummet.
Yeah, they don't have a cap.
It's whatever the owners are willing to spend.
It is whatever the owners are willing to sink into that. They do not have a cap.
The most that they've got is a luxury tax that starts coming into play. And that's why you see several organizations having bought several of their championships in the past.
But how many teams are above the cap?
Above the luxury
the luxury tax. Sorry.
Yeah.
Boston, New
4
York,
or 5,
San Diego,
LA, the Dodgers. Yeah.
Those are
going to be the teams that are going to be there at the end of the year.
Is it? I mean, we had Atlanta make
both New Yorks. I think both New Yorks
make a run. The Toronto Blue Jays are arguably the best team in the East. It's not the Yankees, Red Sox, or Rays. Like you have the Royals a couple years ago that made a run. Like so,
But the teams that are consistently there at the end are the ones that are paying luxury tax
and paying the most luxury tax.
As long as it's not the Dodgers, I'm happy.
The Dodgers will be there because they're paying.
Yeah, see, and I have a problem with that.
But those are the rules.
Anyway, shorten it up to
salary
54 games. There's your hot take.
I like it. Cosign.
There we go.
I don't think it should be 162.
Let's start a petition on that one. Just shorten the season to 54 games.
They're trying to shorten the games. They've got bigger bases now and a pitch clock, so that'll be fun.
Yeah, explain to me how bigger bases shorten the game.
Yeah.
It doesn't. It just adds more offense.
So more
but
batters.
They've limited the shift, right? They're just adding for more offense.
Okay, so more offense leads to longer games. Yeah. You can't have it both ways in baseball.
They added a pitch clock. Well, it also here's the other thing. It added to more steal attempts, right? Bigger bases adds to more steal attempts because it shortens the amount of space in between the bases.
By inches and 90 feet.
By inches, but inches matter, right? And especially get your head out of the gutter. Especially in a game where how many times do we go to review and it's like, oh, is the ball there? Is his foot on the back? They matter, okay? And
so now you have slow guys stealing more bases.
Yeah, essentially. I don't know. We'll see how it works out.
How does that shorten the game?
The pitch clock is what will shorten.
The pitch clock by itself is not shortening the game when you're trying to make offense more. No, it will not. You will have more batters come through the game, which then said pitch clock doesn't matter.
Yeah, but you won't have 45 seconds in between each pitch when batters come up. You have
so now you have 40 batters come through a game instead of 35. And those 5 batters over X amount per pitch clock equals the same amount of game time.
Maybe.
Hey, how about we just make it 7 innings long?
Are we doing a fantasy baseball? No, please, God.
Anyway,
we're giving our fans everything.
This is whole
everything that we are unloading this Tuesday night.
Did you guys see Liverpool gave up a 2-goal lead to Real Madrid today? They were up 2-0 in the first 5 minutes of the game, and then Real Madrid scored 5 unanswered.
Listen, all my bandwidth got taken up coming up with my 54 game analogy here. So no, I didn't see that.
There's some Champions League for you.
I'm not worried about that. I'm a week away from giving a damn about college basketball. So
yes,
here we go, off and running.
Alrighty, I think that's going to take us down to the end of it.
We should have gone to the end.
Good night, America.
Anyway,
subscribe, sign up, stay tuned. Thanks. Peace out.
That's going to do it for us. Socials, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok at Good Old Boys FF. Again, YouTube channel. Go over there. Click that subscribe button. We go live Tuesday nights, 11 p.m. Eastern. And
we'll talk about.
Yeah, exactly. We had things in structure. Anyway, moving on. We'll get into draft stuff and far more football content going forward. Anyway, a lot of fun. He's Kevin. He's Alex. I'm the Derek. Y'all have the good one. Be safe. The Toodaloos.